Hello, my darling. Let me tell you what happened the night the locks clicked and our world cracked open. It started with muffled shouting above the floorboards and ended with a truth that burned brighter than any rage. It was the sound of the lock turning that did it, that cold, deliberate click. Not from the inside, from the top of the basement stairs. I turned to your grandfather, heart thudding so hard it blurred my hearing. "Did he just lock us in?" I whispered. He didn't answer. I ran up the creaky steps, 2 at a time, pressed my ear to the door. "Tommy!" I called. "Thomas, open this door! What are you doing?" Nothing, just silence, thick as syrup. "Thomas, this isn't funny." Still nothing. I turned to look at George. He hadn't moved, just sat on the old bench near the fuse box, staring ahead like a man watching his own funeral. "You knew something," I said. "What did you say to him?" He didn't meet my eyes. "He's angry," he said, slow and hollow. "Let him cool off." "Cool off?" My voice cracked. "He just locked us in the basement, George. This isn't teenage sulking. This is something else." The light bulb above us flickered. The air was damp, musty, the smell of old paint cans and rusted tools. I could still hear the TV from the floor above, some old western playing, gunshots and galloping horses echoing like a cruel soundtrack. "George," I said, lowering my voice, "what did you say to him?" He looked up then, really looked at me. And his eyes, I'll never forget them. That look of someone who's run out of hiding places. He opened his mouth, closed it, then ran his hands down his face like he could wipe away 20 years of something awful. "Maria," he whispered, "there's something I should have told you, something I should have told both of you a long time ago." I froze. The basement felt suddenly colder. He was pale now, almost gray. "I never thought it would come to this," he said. "But he knows. He found out. That's why he did it." My knees went weak. I gripped the railing. "What does he know, George?" The silence that followed was worse than any scream. Then finally, he stood up, walked slowly over to the workbench, and pulled something from under the loose floorboard. An envelope, thick, yellowed, sealed. He handed it to me like it weighed 100 pounds. My name was written on the front, in his handwriting. "What is this?" I asked, voice shaking. "Everything," he said. And then, above us, another click. The lights went out. We were in darkness. And the past was coming. I didn't open the envelope right away. I just held it in the dark, my fingers trembling at the edges, while your grandfather sat back down like the weight of the world had finally dragged him to the floor. The silence between us was thick, pressing in from the stone walls, broken only by the occasional creak of floorboards above. Was Tommy pacing, listening, watching? A part of me still couldn't believe what had just happened. My son, my boy, had turned that key and walked away. After all the sleepless nights, the broken curfews, the second chances, after all the years I fought to keep this family upright while George buried himself in silence. Now this. I lit the emergency lantern we kept by the water heater. The low glow cast long shadows and gave the room an eerie orange hue. It made George look older, his face gaunt, haunted. "When did he find out?" I asked. He rubbed his hands together slowly. "A few days ago. He came home from work early, found me in the garage on the phone. I thought I'd hung up in time, but he heard something. Enough." "And you didn't tell me?" "What was I supposed to say, Maria? That I've been lying to both of you for 20 years? That the life we built, the marriage, the trust, was all tied to something I hid?" I stared at him, unable to speak, because the thing is, even then, even in that moment, I knew. I didn't know the details, not yet. But I knew this wasn't about something small. This wasn't a hidden bank account or a forgotten affair. This was something that had roots, something that had grown under our feet while I raised our son and pretended the ground wasn't shifting. "You should have told me the moment you knew he heard," I said. "I was going to. Tonight. That's why I wrote the letter. But I waited too long." I thought of Tommy's face lately, withdrawn, distracted, tense. How he barely spoke to either of us these past weeks. How his temper flashed like sparks under pressure. I thought it was stress. I thought maybe he was just working too much or falling into some crowd I didn't know. But now I saw the truth behind his eyes. He knew something, and that something was enough to make him lock his parents in a basement. I sat down across from George, the envelope between us. I didn't open it, not yet. "You said this is everything. Then tell me, now." George leaned back, eyes heavy, and for a long moment he said nothing. Then he whispered, "Tommy isn't entirely my son." I couldn't move, couldn't even breathe. "What?" I managed. "He's yours, always was. But the man you think I am, the man you married, wasn't the man who walked into that hospital 20 years ago." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, worn photo. I didn't want to take it. I already knew it was something I couldn't unsee, but I looked. It was George. And another man. Identical. Twins. "My brother," he said. "He died 21 years ago, and I took his place." The lantern flickered, and I knew then that I didn't even know the man who sat across from me. I dropped the photo. It fluttered to the dusty concrete like a dead bird. I stared at it, at the frozen faces of two identical men, one I thought I married and one I never even knew existed. My chest felt tight. My hands tingled. The air down there was already thin, but now it felt like breathing in fog. "Your brother?" I said, and my voice cracked. George, if that was even his name, nodded. "His name was Michael," he said. "We were identical twins, close as children, but different as men. He was reckless, always in some kind of trouble. I tried to stay clean, tried to build a life. But in the end, his mess swallowed us both." My knees nearly gave. I gripped the table, my pulse thudding in my ears. "But I married you," I said. "I met you at the church fundraiser. You asked me out. We dated for a year. You proposed." He shook his head. "That wasn't me, Maria. I couldn't make the math work. Couldn't fit this nightmare into the memories I'd carried all these years. The voice that sang to me in the car, the hand that held mine when the nurse brought Tommy into the room, the man who brought home sunflowers every June without fail. That was him, wasn't it?" "No," I whispered. "No, that wasn't Michael." "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to lie at first. I didn't come to take his life, but he begged me. Michael was dying. He had weeks left. Cancer. He hadn't told you yet." I stared at him, feeling like the walls were closing in. "He told me about you," he continued, "about how much he loved you and Tommy, how he'd ruined everything, debts, stolen money, things you didn't even know about yet. He didn't want to die leaving you and the baby to clean up after him, so he asked me to step in." "To pretend to be him?" George nodded slowly. "Just for a while," he said. "A few weeks. Enough to get the affairs in order. I was supposed to tell you after he passed. Come clean. But—" He looked away, voice crumbling. "Then I met you. Really met you. I saw the way you looked at me, the way you trusted me. And Tommy, he was just a baby. I held him once, Maria, just once, and I felt like he was already mine. And I couldn't walk away. I told myself it was for you, that I was doing the right thing, but I lied." The lantern flickered again. Shadows danced across the walls. I felt cold to my core. You lied to me every day for 20 years, I said, the words bitter in my mouth. I loved you every day for 20 years, he replied. Somewhere above us, a door creaked. We both froze. Then came the footsteps. Slow, measured, pacing. He was still up there, listening, waiting. I think Tommy found Michael's death certificate, George whispered. Or maybe the photo. I'd hidden it in the attic. I was going to destroy it, but I couldn't. Not all of it. Some part of me thought maybe the truth could still come out gently. But he must have found it. I was shaking now. You mean he thinks his father died and someone else took his place? George didn't answer. He didn't have to. The horror on my son's face these past days, those haunted eyes, it all made sense now. He'd been grieving in secret, feeling betrayed, confused, and neither of us knew what he might do next. A sudden noise, something metallic clattering above. I jumped. George, I said quietly, what if he doesn't plan to let us out? He looked at me, and for the first time I saw fear in his eyes too. I held the envelope in one hand and the photo in the other, both trembling like live wires. Every minute in that basement stretched longer than the last, each second charged with fear I hadn't felt since I was a girl, hiding under a kitchen table while my father raged in the next room. George, I said, though his name felt foreign now, like something I'd borrowed and couldn't return. We have to talk to him, right now, before this turns into something we can't fix. But George didn't move, just sat there, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like it held some answer he didn't have the courage to give. Do you even hear me? I snapped. He's upstairs, alone, spiraling. And we're down here, locked in, with nothing but lies between us. He looked up, startled, then nodded. You're right. Well, good. That's a start. I marched to the bottom of the stairs, took a deep breath, and called out. Tommy, Thomas, please come down. We need to talk to you. No yelling, no anger, just talk. Footsteps. He was up there, right above us. The weight of him shifted the ceiling joists as he moved slowly toward the door. Please, sweetheart, I said, softer now. We love you. Whatever you've found, whatever you think, we can face it together. I promise you, baby, we'll tell you the truth. A pause, then finally, his voice, muffled, tight. I know the truth. My heart dropped. Then talk to us. A long beat. I found the journal, he said. George's head snapped up. What journal? I asked. Tommy's voice cracked. The one in the lockbox, in the attic, with the photo and the letter Michael wrote before he died. My breath caught in my throat. That was it then. The whole web, the original sin, the dying confession. He said he'd made mistakes, Tommy went on. That he owed gambling debts, that he forged your signature to take out loans. He said he was going to disappear to save you from his mess. But he didn't, did he? He just switched places with his brother. And you never told me. He was crying now. I don't know who either of you are, he said. I don't know what's real. Tommy, I said gently, look, I didn't know, sweetheart. Not until tonight. I thought he was your father. I loved him as your father. That's not good enough, he shouted suddenly, voice raw with pain. You raised me in a lie. You let me love a ghost. I clutched the railing. I didn't know. Then what was I, huh? He demanded. Just some replacement for a man who vanished? Just another secret you two kept warm all these years? No, I said. No, Tommy. You were never a secret. You were our whole life. Silence. I heard him sit. Floorboards creaked. He was just behind the door now, listening. Tell me, he said finally. Tell me everything, from the beginning. I turned to George. He stood slowly like a man walking to a gallows, He looked 20 years older than he had that morning. "I'll tell you," he said, "but not through a door." Another pause. Then, the sound of keys. Click. The door opened a crack, casting a sliver of golden hallway light into the basement shadows. I climbed the stairs slowly, heart thudding, and pushed it open the rest of the way. Tommy stood in the hall, arms folded, his face streaked with tears, eyes like burning coal. He didn't move to hug me, didn't step back. "Sit," he said, motioning to the table near the kitchen. "You talk, I listen, then we'll see." And that was the moment I realized. We weren't just trying to explain the past. We were on trial. We sat at the kitchen table like strangers. Me, the man I'd once trusted with my soul, and the son who now looked at us like we were criminals. Tommy's hands trembled as he set down the leather-bound journal. I could see the indentation on the cover, where something sharp had once pressed into it. Maybe the corner of a hammer, maybe rage. The house was dead quiet, save for the fridge's faint humming and the tick of the kitchen clock. 2:13 a.m. "I read every page," Tommy said, voice low but sharp. "He was afraid. He was desperate. But he wanted to leave, not die. He said he'd fake a disappearance, run off to South America. That's the plan he wrote." George, Michael, whoever he really was, shifted in his seat. That was his first plan, but he changed it. Tommy laughed, bitter and hard. "How convenient." I leaned in. "Sweetheart, you have every right to be angry, but please understand. I didn't know. I swear on your life, I had no idea your father had a twin, let alone that the man I married wasn't the one I met." "Then you're a fool." The words cut sharper than I expected. He didn't even look at me when he said them. "Tommy," I said gently, "you were just a baby. I didn't have anything to compare him to. I'd never even met Michael's family. He said they were estranged. I didn't ask more than once. Maybe I was a fool, but I trusted your father. And after a while, love fills in the gaps. You don't question it." He blinked fast, like he was trying to swallow tears again. George finally spoke. "It wasn't supposed to last more than a month. I was going to tell you, both of you. But you were grieving, Maria. You were fragile. I kept pushing it down the road, and the further down I went, the harder it became to come clean. The guilt nearly swallowed me. But the love?" He looked at Tommy, eyes wet now. "The love was always real." Tommy's jaw tightened. "You pretended to be my father for 2 decades. What do you think that does to someone when they find out?" George looked at him, full of sorrow. "I know what it does. I've lived with it every day. I prayed that the truth would never reach you like this. But it did. And I'll accept whatever judgment you give." Tommy reached into his coat pocket. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought he was going to pull out a weapon. But instead, he placed a faded postcard on the table. On the front, Rio de Janeiro. On the back, a scrawl of handwriting. "For when I go, you'll know I loved you both. M." My breath caught. "You kept this?" I whispered. "I found it between the pages," he said. "He must have written it before he died. Maybe he meant to send it. Maybe he didn't." His eyes fixed on George. "So if he didn't fake his death, and you didn't kill him, then where is he buried?" George closed his eyes. "Behind St. Agnes Chapel," he said. "The plot's unmarked. I visit once a year. I pay the groundskeeper to keep it clean." Tommy stood. He paced the kitchen twice before stopping near the doorway. "I don't know what I'm supposed to feel," he said finally. "Grief for a man I never met? Or rage at the one who raised me?" I rose too, slowly, my hand trembling as I reached for him. "Maybe both, sweetheart. You were dealt a story without your choosing, but that doesn't mean it's over." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and something in his face cracked. "I don't want to hate you," he whispered. Tears welled in my eyes. "Then don't. Just ask us the hard questions. Yell if you have to, but don't disappear. Don't shut the door like he did." He hesitated, then walked back to the table and sat down. We didn't sleep that night. The three of us sat there at the kitchen table until the pale light of morning began to filter through the windows. Nobody touched the tea I brewed at 4 a.m. It sat cooling on the table between us, next to the journal, the postcard, and the unopened envelope with my name on it. I still hadn't read it. Something in me wasn't ready. It felt like opening it would be a final step into a world I couldn't step back from. Tommy sat with his arms crossed, his jaw tight. He wasn't yelling anymore, but the silence between us felt even heavier. And George, his hands were folded like he was in prayer, though I knew better. He was bracing for the judgment he believed was coming. "You said you loved him," Tommy said suddenly, breaking the quiet. "Michael, do you ever think about him, Mom? The real one?" The question hit like a gust of cold wind. I nodded slowly. "I think about the man I knew before Tommy was born. The man who made me laugh with terrible jokes, who built the crib and painted the nursery and cried the first time he held his son. That was Michael. And then he changed. He started disappearing, drinking more, staying out late. I looked up at the man beside me. And then he came back, and he was kind again, steady. I thought he'd changed because of the baby. I thought he'd grown up. I never suspected it was a different man altogether." Tommy scoffed. "That's insane, Mom. How can you not tell the difference between two men, even if they're twins?" "I ask myself that every day," I said quietly. "But I can't change what I missed, only what I do now." Tommy looked away, jaw clenched. "So what happens next?" It was George who answered. "I step away," he said. "I move out. You two need time. I've stolen enough of it already." The words chilled me. "You don't have to leave," I said, but even as I said it, I wasn't sure what I meant. Was I defending our years together, or afraid of starting over? Or was it just habit? The instinct to smooth over to protect what little remained? Tommy shook his head. "No, he's right. You should leave." George nodded slowly. "I will." I watched the man I had shared my life with, birthdays, flu seasons, anniversaries, and fights, agree to vanish like a ghost who finally realized he wasn't welcome in the daylight. It gutted me. But then I looked at Tommy, and I saw a different kind of grief in him. Not fury anymore, but something even more dangerous. That hollow space where love used to live. "I don't know how to feel about you, Mom," he said, barely a whisper. "I don't know if I trust anything from my childhood anymore." I stood, circled the table, and wrapped my arms around him from behind. He stiffened at first. Then, after a long pause, he let his head fall against my arm. "Start from now," I whispered into his hair. "We'll go back if you need to, but we'll start from now." He didn't answer, but he didn't pull away either. Behind us, George rose quietly and left the room. I heard the front door open, then close, and just like that, the house was quiet again. Too quiet. That afternoon, I opened the envelope. I waited until the house was empty, until Tommy had gone for a walk, and George didn't leave a note, but he'd packed a bag. I found his wedding ring in the bathroom dish. I think he knew there was nothing left to say. The envelope was thick, the paper inside slightly yellowed, like it had aged waiting for this moment. I sat by the window, my glasses low on my nose, fingers cold despite the sunlight, and I read every word. It was a letter addressed to me, dated 2 years after Tommy was born. "Maria, If you're reading this, it's because I didn't have the courage to say it aloud. I've lied to you every day of our life together, not to hurt you, but because once I stepped into your world, I didn't know how to leave it without breaking you. Or myself. My brother asked me to take care of you both. At first it was a strange, surreal request. I thought it was madness. But when I saw you holding that baby, saw how lost you were after Michael started slipping, I knew I couldn't walk away. You gave me something I never had before. Not even as his brother. A home. A reason to wake up. Real joy. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't expect it. But know this. I loved you, Maria. I loved Tommy as my own. I lived a borrowed life, yes, but every beat of my heart in this house was real. If the day comes that you open this, I hope you'll remember not just the lie, but also the love. I sat there for a long time after I finished, tears dripping onto the ink, smudging parts of the final line. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even confused, just tired. So tired. You know what no one tells you? That grief can come for people who are still alive. That you can miss someone sitting just a room away. That night Tommy came home. He stood in the doorway like he wasn't sure he should come inside. I held up the envelope. I read it, I said. He nodded, eyes rimmed with red. I'm not saying we forgive, I told him, but maybe we understand, just a little more than yesterday. He came in, sat at the table again, same chair as always. We didn't talk for a while. Then he asked if I still had the key to the plot behind St. Agnes. We went together the next day. The groundskeeper nodded at me like he'd seen 1,000 quiet pilgrims before. We stood before the unmarked grave, the grass trimmed neat, the earth undisturbed. Tommy didn't say much, just placed the postcard down like an offering. When we got back home, I made dinner. Just stew and bread, like always. He said, "This tastes like when I was 5." And I said, "That part was always true." We ate in silence, but it wasn't the sharp, broken kind. It was soft, the kind that lets you breathe again. Later that week, I found a small envelope in the mailbox, no return address. Inside was a photo of the 3 of us years ago, George, me, and Tommy at the beach, smiling, wind in our hair, sand on our feet. On the back, just 2 words, handwritten. Thank you. I never heard from him again, but I think he knew I forgave him in the only way I could, not with words, but by letting the story end and moving forward.